Hey everybody, Portland Chess Shop here to bring you the chess action, and we have round number 6 of the Aronian Kramnik match. So this is the final match of the tournament. Aronian has the white pieces. The match is tied. The first game was decisive, in which Aronian won with black against Kramnik. Second round, Kramnik played the Berlin Wall defense. Aronian got like nothing out of it. It was a draw. Third round, Kramnik won with white after Aronian made a queen sacrifice, or exchanged his queen for a few minor pieces. It was pretty interesting. Round 4, Aronian played the king pawn again and ran into the Berlin defense once again and basically got nothing. So this is round number 6. Aronian, I'm hoping, is playing for a win with the white pieces because I want him to beat Kramnik. I know I've expressed my allegiance to Aronian, but that's the way it is. You know, sometimes you have commentators that root for one guy, and I'm rooting for Aronian because he is badass. So he's an awesome guy, and I want to see him win. And I'm afraid if he plays the king pawn, he's going to run into the Berlin defense again, and I don't think that he can beat the Berlin. So I'm hoping that he plays queen pawn and gives us an exciting game. Oh no, the king pawn. How are you going to beat the Berlin wall? So Kramnik, I think, is going to go for the Berlin. Let's see if we see it. We do see e5 hinting that he might go for the Berlin once again. So knight f3, basically just a good move, attacking this pawn, forcing usually knight f6 or knight c6. One of the knights come towards the center. We'll see knight f6. It looks like Kramnik is going to, play his Berlin defense. So the bishop attacks, and Berlin defense it is. So I don't see how Aronian, can win this match, considering that he tried to beat the Berlin twice and had poor results. I mean, they were both quick draws. So I'm not sure what the thinking is here exactly. Maybe Aronian almost always plays e4, but it seems like most high-level players play d4 and e4. I wonder what Kramnik's defense is against d4 that Aronian fears so much that he's not willing to try a different opening. I'm not totally sure. I know that this is Kramnik's specialty against king pawn, but I'm not really familiar with what Kramnik's specialty is against queen pawn. d3. Okay, we see some deviations. Thank goodness. So I actually played d3 as well in this position. The idea is to avoid the line in which the queens are exchanged, avoid the main line, and just get into a middle game position where you could try to outplay your opponent. This move is pretty useful because you can do things like with the knight go to d2, f1, and g3 is something that I often do. That can be before or after castling. So with c3 as well, and then you can eventually play d4. So you're like, half a move down from the main line of the Roy Lopez in a sense, but you get some maneuvering and some with this knight, for example. You get some different options. The knight from this square would go, possibly to f5 or h5, as well as it can come back to e3. So I really like these maneuverings with the knight. I'm predicting that we'll see something like that in this game. So it looks like d6 is always played in this position. Huh. So at least according to Crafty the computer, which I don't think has an extensive opening book, d6 is always played, but Kramnik decides to play bishop c5. So one thing is, like, after he will play d6 inevitably, I think, and after that this bishop will be able to pin the knight with some pressure, let's just call it. So we'll see what goes on. We see the knight moves, and I think the knight might go for this strategy, but maybe not immediately because then a knight g4, so you might have to play something like h3, but you wouldn't want to obviously waste a tempo. So let's see how the move ordering works. But the knight is good towards the center. I think this is a solid move. I like the proverb, knights before bishops. Oh, by the way, I just analyzed an hour and a half of a chess death match on chess.com. It was a blitz death match against International Master Holt against International Master Hansen. They were the highest bullet and blitz players in their respective fields on chess.com. That's how they got invited. So pretty cool. I recommend that you go check out that video. It's an hour and a half long, so it's like a movie almost. We do see d6, and we see c3. The idea behind c3 is that you're going to have to play this because then after a6 and the bishop retreats b5, and then the bishop can go here after knight a5. You could retreat it to c2. At least that happens in a lot of Roy Lopez lines. Because although this bishop attacks the knight, it's kind of weird in the Roy Lopez. It doesn't. You don't actually like take the knight. You just want to pin the knight, and somehow that is good. It's like it's kind of subtle. So castles and castles, and then this knight retreats. I won't be able to inflict him with doubled pawns. I think this knight has some ideas, maybe going to g6, possibly f4 and h4. So the position is equal according to Crafty so far. Both players are playing relatively quickly. Aronian's actually taking a little bit more time than Kramnik, so Kramnik probably knows this line pretty well because he's a specialist in the opening on the Berlin Wall defense and its deviations. So knight to g6 and rook e1. Apparently black is slightly better now. Not sure. Well, yeah, h3 does weaken some squares. I think the knight could come to f4 at some point with decisive attack effect. Some weaknesses on these 4 squares, I think. So c6 is played, the bishop retreats, and he centralizes his rook. Putting the rook towards the center is usually a good idea. So he had to play this first so that the bishop wouldn't be able to take the rook. Makes some sense. So pawn up, d4 is played. So this is sort of the central break, but it looks like black could be slightly better in this position. So I'm sort of rushing through this a little bit because I just did that hour and a half commentary on chess.com, the deathmatch, so kind of exhausted. So just doing my best to bring you the 6th game. So pawn up is played, and both players having relatively a lot of time. After here, there could be an exchange. The bishop retreats, and it's a strong center, but it's a little bit hyper-modern because these the black pieces and pawns can start to attack the center, poke holes in it, and then exploit weak squares. And this knight on d2 is a little bit awkward in this particular position because it hasn't had the time to jump over here, and it's blocking in this bishop, and this bishop would be theoretically pretty good on this diagonal. So the bishop just retreats, and then this bishop retreats. So Crafty isn't in love with these moves, but I think these players are a little bit stronger than Crafty anyway. So that kind of creates an interesting dynamic where I'm able to talk about what Crafty thinks, but at the same time, don't take everything that the computer says too seriously. So h6 is played, and a4. Both players sort of, expanding on different flanks. Bishop to e6. I do like centralizing the bishop. This looks like pretty good defense. I like the pawn structure basically for both players. White has more space in the center, but potentially his pawns could become overextended and weak. And I think that this knight on d2 is a little bit awkward, blocking in the c2, blocking in this square, but also necessarily defending this square as well, because otherwise there'd be like an exchange, and then it could take here, but not now because the bishop's here. So the knight does decide to go to f1. I thought that this was inevitable. Takes, knight takes, and then the bishop retreats. Interesting. So this knight has decided to do part of the maneuver that I predicted, and then I think it'll either go to g3 or e3 momentarily, but the bishop may come forward as well. So it's interesting that black is supposed to be slightly better here. I wonder why that could be, considering that white has a little bit more space. But as I said, there's some potential weaknesses. I think that Aronian is probably happy with his position. He is up 15 minutes on time. We've seen that throughout the match, so he plays a little bit faster than Kramnik. f4. Okay, so this is possibly an error. It's definitely an aggressive move, Aronian being the aggressor in these matches and Kramnik being the defender. Kramnik definitely would play the Terran in StarCraft. There is no question whatsoever that Kramnik would play the Terran. He plays defensively, he turtles, he builds siege tanks, and bunkers, and expands whenever possible, but never overreaches. And I think he drops Marines and medevacs in your base. And Aronian, is he more of a Protoss or a Zerg? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe more. I don't know. You have to change your style to face, a turtle player like Kramnik. So I think Aronian may play the Zurich sometimes, but he's playing a little bit of a different style of Zurich than normal. Because, I mean, this move is maybe a Zurich move, right? Like coming up with a quick expansion. But it just doesn't seem. It seems like the Terran defenses will be able to potentially stop this attack. But at the same time, Crafty didn't really like this move before, but it's starting to think that it's a little bit better than I thought. One of the reasons why I don't like it, or don't love it at least, is first of all, this knight is pinned to this bishop, which seems really bad. I like to move my king out of the pin before I play f4, absolutely. Second of all, g3 and e3 are weakened forever. So those squares, this square particularly g3 looks really weak, as well as some other, maybe this square is weak as well. Yeah, so some weaknesses on the dark squares have been created in White's camp, and Black's dark squared bishop is pretty good pinning this knight that's centralized. So we see a break in the center, and e5 is played. So now at this point, the knight may be able to come forward, which is kind of interesting because what happens after bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, right? It looks like he's won a pawn, but then there are some active plays involving, I think, the pinned knight. The queen can start to attack this knight after the bishop moves to attack the rook that just took here. So I think the pieces have trouble with their coordination. Perhaps. We'll see. So knight does decide to go to f4, and we'll see if Aronian decides to try and take it. g3 is being attacked, so is f2, another square that is weak right now. So some serious dark square weaknesses in White's attack. This happens to me when I'm playing against stronger players where I think that I'm attacking, but then it turns out that my attack created more weaknesses. It turns out that White's king is more vulnerable than Black's king, even though this f4 aggressive move was played. So that happens to me a lot in chess. Sometimes attacks fail because it turns out that your king is more exposed than your opponent's. Pretty interesting. It's actually slightly deep, I swear. So bishop takes, pawn takes. Okay, wait. Let's go back a second. So this is pretty interesting. So he does decide to take. And now this pawn is probably going to fall, but there's going to be a little bit of complications. Decides to play a5 first, and now the bishop just takes on a5. So Kramnik takes a pawn. Looks like the pawns are going to be equal if he takes here. But if he takes here, then I don't know. This is pinned, so f6 could become possible, and then both these pawns might fall theoretically, because f6 he can't take because there's a pin. The rook is undefended on this square. So knight g3 has to be played because he can't take with the rook because f6, and then these pawns will fall. So he has to try to take it with the knight. So he plays knight here, but this might be a little bit slow. I'm not sure if he's going to get what he needs. So the bishop does come back, and Kramnik is supposedly better in this position. Let's go, Aronian. Come on, I really want you to win, but it just doesn't look like. It looks like you tried to play for a win, and Kramnik is just, his Berlin Wall defense is too much. Too much. So king h2, and now it looks like Aronian's position is he's down like a full pawn, which is bad. I'm disappointed. I'm not sure what to say. Looks like c5 could be a really good move. Basically a tactic. He's not going to have many squares. He does play c5. Ouch. The knight does need to go forward so that it has sub-threats. But in this, there's going to be bishop takes, and then queens can come off, which should favor Kramnik, who is up a pawn. Because that's the thing. This pawn looks like it's going to fall, but it hasn't fallen yet, And he might be able to, keep the pawn or win another pawn in the time that it takes him to take it. So takes. Queens get traded off. Now this pawn isn't even attacked. And the rook comes to the center. This bishop comes out. Oh, so Crafty is rethinking this position, thinking, hey, maybe this isn't so good for black after all. Maybe white can draw this. Seems plausible. So the idea is that, I don't know, he's not going to take this pawn anytime soon, but eventually he'll take it. So the d file is contested with the rooks. So pretty exciting game, I guess. So Kramnik is down a little bit on time. The rook does decide to come down, so if there's an exchange, then this pawn would be pretty nasty, I guess. Yeah, definitely nasty. The rook is forced to defend the bishop, just about his only move, and then f6 is played. This pawn is not dying. This is a that's like a bunker, right? Isn't that like a bunker in front of your opponent's base? Like your opponent has like Zurich has expanded once, right? So he's got two bases, but then you put a bunker like outside their second base, between their second and third, or something, and just put a little tank there. This is a tank, and here's another tank. So hopefully chess players play StarCraft, or else I'll have to start using different analogies. I'm a man of many games. I play StarCraft and poker, and I play tournament Magic the Gathering, as well as chess. So pawn takes, knight takes check. That's interesting. The king comes to f8, and now it looks like white could have a excellent move here. Crafty gave it 2 exclams for a second. Rook to a4, which I think is part of Aronian's thinking in this position. I hope that he does play it. So the idea behind it is, there's a few ideas. You're attacking this square. I wonder why Crafty says that a5 is the best play against rook to a4. Because you're threatening b4 as well? Possibly. So rook a4 is an interesting move according to the computer, with some complications, perhaps half a pawn up for white, even though he's still... No, the pawns are equal now. So that's good. This pawn is actually a pass pawn, and so is this one. So let's see, rook a4 is played, and a5 is the idea that Crafty fights, but I think it's kind of an unintuitive move. Let's see if Kramnik decides to play it. He doesn't. Yeah, so as I expected, a5 is kind of a computer move, kind of unusual thing to see. So Kramnik doesn't play that move. I'm not sure if he doesn't find it or finds reasons why he doesn't like it. But in this position, it looks like f5 is awesome. So Aronian may have made a comeback in this game. I am hoping. Kramnik is down 19 minutes to 30, which is good for Aronian. Sorry to root so much for Aronian, but I just think the chess should be an exciting game. Shouldn't be a game full of draws, and I think we should use 3 points for a win system in tournaments, for example, where you get 3 points for every win and 1 point for every draw, so that it gives an incentive to attacking play rather than drawing play. So in this position, the rook comes back, and it looks like f5 is going to be a really good move. It's going to attack the knight, force the knight to move, and then you could play things like c4, and then wow, so c4 is interesting. It looks like the computer actually suggests a rook an exchange sacrifice back, because it might just be too good to have this up here, and I think the knight will actually be trapped. You could play bishop f2 or even king g3 to trap the knight after f5 and knight here. So the rook will have to sacrifice itself. So we do see... Wait, c4 is not the move. f5 was supposed to be the move. So Aronian misses the f5. Shoot! And now he's losing again. He missed a tactic, at least according to the computer. That is a huge disappointment. This rook is not looking as good as it was. It's no longer attacking the e4 square. And that dynamic play, he missed it, and that was his one opportunity. So white apparently up a little bit in this position. So it could definitely go either way. Both players having 5 pawns, so position is pretty equal. Crafty's starting to like white's position more and more. Took a drink. So Crafty's starting to like white's position, and I like Aronian's time advantage. I think that is going to be helpful. But Aronian was, I think, about twice as much time before, but now he's only up 2/3 or 3 halves. So B4. Oh, sorry, I got to log back on. B4 is played right here, using this rook, trying to make the rook active, maybe try to win a pawn on C5. And Crafty is changing its mind in this position, not totally sure who's winning. This position is pretty complicated, so I'm pretty excited. But Aronian took a lot of time to find that move. Look at that. He used 8 minutes. Now he's only up 1 minute, so Aronian has lost his time advantage, which seems significant to me. But I'm watching a lot of bullet games, and they still have 18, 19 minutes, so they have some time to find the correct moves. At move 40, they will get more time, so they have 2 minutes per move for the next 9 moves. Rook takes, E3. Kramnik decides, kind of out of nowhere, to sacrifice. Wow. Part of the idea is that after rook takes, I think there's C takes, B3, then this rook will have to move, but possibly to rook to G3. Interesting. So it's apparently still pretty equal. And computers are notoriously bad at finding exchange sacrifices, so the idea that the computer thinks that it's just slightly better for white means that it could be equal. That this point 3 it's actually just 0. Kramnik may have already thought this out. So takes. You see, I think Crafty's gonna start to like this exchange sacrifice a little bit better as it starts to see it. See? Oh yeah, knowing a little bit about how computers think. So the rook comes down here to attack the knight. The knight does not move. The knight does not play back to e7. He just pushes his pawn. Kramnik does know that pawns turn into queens. He is aware of this. But it may not be good in this situation. It looks like it's a huge blunder, according to Crafty. So we will see. Crafty has been, thinking these positions over, but this is the biggest advantage for either side that Crafty has suggested. So I think that this could be good. The idea is that you're going to take the knight, e2 will be played, and then you're going to check on g8, king e7, and then you play rook a1. After which rook takes it here, rook takes check, king f7, and you just play knight takes f6, and then you play over here, take this pawn, and you have a rook against bishop in an endgame, which should be, it's possible to win. Takes pawn up. Okay, so he doesn't play the check yet, but he does play rook back, which I think is fine. So he can't queen because then there's just check, king here, takes check, and then you win all the rooks, which is good. So bishop plays to f2, and 4 minutes against 9 minutes. So Kramnik now has the time advantage, but now has the weaker position. Here's a check, king up, another check. King comes up again. White up a pawn and a half in this position. So I think white is prepared to sacrifice his rook when this pawn queens. He does take on b7, and now the pawn queens. White sacrifices his rook, takes, but now the position is 3 pawns against 4 pawns. White is up a pawn in this position. So pretty exciting stuff. There was a little bit of sacrifices by both sides there, but now the position is clarified and is an edge for white.
Check.
Here's a check. King comes over here.
Check.
May see another check. We do. The king does not take because after which this knight check is devastating. It defends the rook, checks the king, and attacks this rook. So the king has to come to c6. There's another check. Another check. Game drawn. Wow, I wonder why they would draw in this position. It sounds like, at least according to Crafty, white can win this. So a little bit of a disappointing draw there. I want to see them play it out, see if white could pull off a draw in this position. But I don't know, Aronian didn't know how to do it. Felt like Kramnik was pretty good at defending. Kramnik could maybe defend this. I'm not sure. So I guess that's a draw for the Aronian-Kramnik match. It's kind of stupid that they can draw the whole match. I mean, it should be decisive, I think. So I'm not sure if there's a tiebreaker. Hopefully there is. But anyway, thanks for watching. Portland Chess Shop. Appreciate it. Bye.